So hi everyone, my name is Jeffrey, this is Carl and Elvin. Today we're going to present to you our sustainable city design for Taipei. So let's first give you an overview of our city. So Taipei City has a population of around 2.7 million with a total land area of 272 square kilometers and a GDP of around 44K per capita. So in case you don't know, Taipei is the capital city of Taiwan, which is located in the southeastern Asia, part of Asia, shown in the map here. And it has a really high population density of almost 10,000 people per square kilometers. And the average per capita GHG emissions over the past 5 years is 5.38 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. Not per year. Oh, right, yeah, per year. Which is among the among the average value among the world cities. But in terms of urban green and open spaces, only 5 square meters are available for each citizen, which is really low. And with these 3 numbers, you can sort of see the reflection of what the current problem of the Taipei city is, which is the lack of land and lack of green spaces, which leads to poor air quality. We also projected that in 2050, the population is going to reach 3.1 million, which is a 16% rise compared to the values in 2016. So in an effort to try to solve these problems that I just mentioned, the government has several initiatives and plans. For example, the Taipei City Greenhouse Gas Control Plan, which they set a target to reduce the city's GHG emission to 8 million tons of CO2 equivalent by 2050. And recently, they also created a platform that allows citizens and experts to exchange ideas towards the city development plan and create their own visions of 2050, which is similar to what we're doing. So for our vision of 2050, we basically focus on 3 pillars. Resource management, which refers to the effective use of water and waste materials in the city. Emission-free energy, which relates to the air quality improvement and GHG emission reduction. And finally, land utilization, which tackles the land scarcity problems in Taipei. So all of our design is based on the innovations and inspirations all over the world. For example, the safe bike lane design in Denmark, and floating solar PV in Japan, and underground tunnels in Hong Kong. And these will be referenced in our design later. So now let's get to our design components, and we're going to start with land use plans first. So from this graph, you can see the current land use mix in Taipei in 2015. So what we can conclude in this graph is basically that almost half of the land is unused. Is not available or feasible to be used for urban expansion or development. As you can see, 25% of the lands are protected zones, and another 24% is just rivers and other non-urban areas. And the situation can be shown more clearly in this map, where, as you can see, Taipei is basically surrounded by these protected areas, and there's a huge national park in the top, in the north. And because of this geographical constraint, the urban districts are densely developed in this tiny little area here, and we have no capacity for further expansions. And also, furthermore, due to government regulations, the majority of the buildings in Taipei are low-rise. So this is a really serious problem in terms of trying to accommodating the population growth in 2050. So after analyzing this problem, we came up with these solutions, which can be basically divided into 3 parts. The first part is we're going to focus on the expansion of the commercial buildings. In other words, we're going to build more commercial buildings in the central area of Taipei to facilitate the expected demand in 2050. And the second part, we're going to basically move a lot of things underground, including highways and public facilities. That way we can generate more available land in the above ground for further development of other things. And in the last part, we're gonna redevelop the existing infrastructures in the city. For example, in the neighborhood, we're gonna redevelop the H district to build more high-rises to accommodate the population growth. And we're gonna also acquire more agricultural land for further expansions of urban expansions. And finally, we're gonna redevelop the Songshan Airport into a city park for more green and blue spaces. Now Carl is going to talk about the neighborhood design.
Okay. In the neighborhood design, we are focused on the improvement of current neighborhood because the limitation of urban area expansion. In our 2050 vision, here is the sketch. The metro station will be located in the center of the neighborhood, and combined with the shopping complex underground, a large open and green space can be located above the grade. And also the high-rise building need to be built in the neighborhood because high population density in Taipei. And also the green space can be surrounded by building. Also more green space can be developed based on the underground facilities such as public service, district cooling system, and underground highway. And due to the continuous street parking, walking and cycling can be encouraged by build safe bike lane and overpass for the pedestrian. In the green building strategy, we think like Taipei is a lake of the sustainable energy source. We promote to use BIPV in the city to. This is the technology that integrated PV panels with the building envelope, which is able to produce about 150 kilowatt-hour per meter square per year. And natural lighting strategy refers to the design of the building orientation and the window and the internal structures. Sunlight can be utilized as a lighting source for the building, able to save like 117 kilowatt-hour electricity. Also reduce like 58,000 tons of CO2. Due to the hot climate in Taipei, it requires large cooling loads. Green roofs can be seen as a high-level insulation on the roof to reduce energy consumption. It eventually reduces about 200 gigawatt-hour and 100,000 tons of CO2. And due to the high cooling load, we promote to use district cooling system. It can centralize the cooling source and serve to the different buildings. Eventually, it can save about 1,000 gigawatt-hour and reduce like 520,000 tons of CO2. Since most of building Taipei are reinforced concrete structure, cycled and renewable building materials should be promoted as they have low average carbon footprint. And also, the steel and timbers are suggested to be structural components as the carbon footprint is only 70% of the reinforced concrete structure. As a result, it reduces like 44,000 tons of CO2. In order to reduce the water consumption in building, rainwater harvest system can be used to collect and store rainwater for municipal water demand. And also, the internal customized grey water system can be used to recycle clean water. It can save like 173,000 million liters water consumption. By applying these strategies, the total GHG emission can be reduced from 10 million to about 8 million tons of CO2 in 2050. The next is transportation design. In terms of shift in land use, the commercial areas are located at the red ring at the core, and the residential areas are located at the yellow ring. So it requires the increase in the travel demand. here is our current traffic mode in Taipei. You can see like only 25% of traffic are public transit and bike, and about almost half traffic are automobile. So it may produce a lot of GHG emissions. So our goal is to meet the increased travel demand and reach the GHG emission reduction. In the subway system, since the Taipei has an advanced subway system, so our vision in 2050 is to have 8 more lines in the city, and also reduce average peak hour headway to less than 2 minutes. It can lead to the encouragement to the public transit and increase the ridership. In order to encourage cycling in the city, there are 2 barriers in Taipei. One barrier is lack of bike lane. We promote to build more bike lane and more connected bike path network. And another barrier is bike lane safety. We promote to use raised bike lane design. The bike lane can be separated with travel line and side road by the curb. Based on the regression model from the household size, income, and vertical availability, our travel demand for the automobile can be estimated. The VKT in 2050 is like about 41 billion kilometers. Based on the travel demand, our number of vehicles can be estimated in 2050, which is shown in the table. So based on that, our traffic mode in 2050 can be projected. There are more public transit in the city and less automobile. In the vertical type in 2050, like about 80% of vehicles are alternative fuel vertical, like BEV fuel cell and PHEV, and also 80% of electric motorcycle we need to use, and 100 BEV in bus. In order to promote this strategy, we are encouraged to use HOV, which can promote car sharing and electric car, and also charging station, and also the battery swiping system for the motorcycling, and the fast charging system for the bus. Next, I will pass to so in general, the total GHG emission can be reduced from the 5.6 million to 2.9 million tons of CO2. Next, I will pass to Alvin.
Thanks, sir. After we implement all the strategies that we have proposed in the previous parts, we project that in 2050, Taipei will have electricity demand of 20,000 gigawatt hours and consumption of gasoline of 230 milliliters, which is like a 30% increase of electricity use and a 3/4 of decrease in the gasoline consumption. It's mainly contributed by the promotion of green vehicles, which shifts the gas consumption into electricity. And in fact, in Paris right now, like 90% of the electricity is generated by fossil fuels. Nuclear accounts 7% of the power generation, and the rest is by biomass and by renewables. Since we target to have a cleaner grid, but there are limitations in land scarcity and availability of natural resources. In such a case, the promotion of renewable technologies should only accommodate 10% of 2050's energy demand. And after the incident of Fukushima, there's some discussions of whether they should continue using nuclear. So that's why we were a little bit conservative of having such a portion of nuclear as a power supply in 2050. In such a case, like the rest 80% of energy supplied in 2050 should be produced by fossil fuels. But still, we promote of using natural gas replacing oil and coal, which has like a much higher GHG footprint. Water is a vital part of a society. That's why we have to consider it in a sustainable city. In fact, Taipei, as a developed city, it performs pretty well in total water management, but still there's some room for improvement. We have created a framework, and then we're going to have some strategies based on 4 components of including drinking water, wastewater, stormwater management, and recreational uses of water. The main issue is on minimizing the environmental impact. It can be achieved by implementing some construction wetlands near the outlets of the sewage plants. It acts like a filter and removes the contaminants of sewage before discharging to rivers and sea. Another strategy is to upgrade the sewage channels, which minimize the leak to groundwater and soil contamination. For protecting the water source, the agricultural activity near the catchment of the water reservoirs should be protected. And the last, if we're going to create a more livable city for Taipei to become, we should create more blue spaces for preservation of biodiversity and recreational uses. In fact, Taipei does perform very well in waste infrastructure, and it's with the global recognition. In 2016, it has a waste recycling of 58%, but still it has a lot of room for improvement. We can promote dedicated refuse bags, promote the classified waste at their homes, and we hope to achieve a target of 70% recycling rate in 2050. And the recycling of the energy potential of the waste is also another focus point. We can improve the efficiency by introducing 2-step waste incineration, which would yield a higher energy production. After you take a look at all we suggested, let's take a look at how Taipei would perform after we have suggested the sustainable designs. And when we compare the numbers, we see there's 1/3 of reduction in total greenhouse gas emissions. Most of them are contributed by the buildings and transportation sector, and it will yield a GHG emission per capita of 3.22 in 2050. Compared to the 18 million tons from the projection, our design could achieve an 8 million reduction in GHG, but still it's slightly higher than the city's target of 8 million. We take a look at urban metabolism. We can see that the water use has greatly reduced for 40%. The fuel use would be reduced for 75%, and around a 30% increase in electricity. More waste is also recycled, and also as you implement the BIPV, and since Taiwan has a policy of feed-in tariff, more energy will be produced and given back to the grid of the Taiwan Power Company. Recently, the UN has developed a Sustainable Development Goal, and then Goal 11 is related to sustainable cities and neighborhoods. Actually, Taiwan performs pretty well in cultural heritage and public participation in sustainable urbanization. But still, there's some certain problems that we could improve. The first is Taiwan has inadequate and affordable housing. There are issues in subdivided flats and insufficient living space. In 2016, the average living space per citizen is around 20 square meters, which is pretty low, which is around 2 times of your bedroom. And then there's also natural disasters is a major threat. And that's why this complies with our design. And finally, we want to give special thanks to Dr. Abraham and the TAs of this course. And thank you all.